D23 Marvel announcement blows our freaking minds. A new Star Wars trilogy is promised. Denzel Washington drops a huge Black Panther rumor, and streamers sizzle with upcoming releases. All that and more right after this. Welcome to Multiverse News, your source for information about all your favorite fictional universes. My name's Matthew Carroll, and with me on our beloved panel today, we have Jay Sisson. What's going on, Jay?
Hey, doing great. A little bit of a sore throat, soldiering on, here for the cast, and gonna get through this. Maybe a lot of coughs to edit out, though. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we did Penguin last night, and you
Lots
coughed
of coughs.
a lot.
Lots
and
of
I kept
coughs.
reaching for my marker button and realizing I wasn't editing. And so, sorry about that, Jay Scotty.
Sorry, Scotty.
Haley Hobbs, what's going on?
I'm here with perfect vocal cords.
Okay.
Shade. Jay. Shade.
So much shade. Good Lord. I feel like the sizzle coming off of that burn. And Jay Scotty St. Clair.
You asked for me. Here I am.
How was editing out all those coughs?
He was actually pretty courteous. I noticed he did a good job of distancing himself from the microphone, but I'm still at that level where I go through. I go through with a fine-tooth comb, and I was able to, find the little points here and there where the mic did pick it up, but he made it pretty easy on me. So thank you.
Nice.
There you go.
Nice. Good man.
Haley.
Good man.
Nobody's editing my coughs out. Jay. Maybe you should go get some of those Reapers.
Ooh, really
clear it
have
up
some
down
coughing. Yeah, clear them sinuses. All right, we have a 5-star review from our buddy Niche, who is also a patron. I think here and on MCU Cast he's a patron, so thank you, Niche,
That's
for
a
that.
real one.
Money bags.
A real one for sure. Money bags. All right, he says in his 5-star review, Marvel has taught me 2 things since rolling out their Disney Plus shows. 1, everyone who watches a Marvel TV show is likely to have seen all of the movies, but the opposite is definitely not true. 2, there are many wonderful and creative ways to connect TV shows to the wider narrative of a connected universe that does not make them mandatory viewing to understand tentpole films. I will be paying close attention over the next few years to see if Kevin Feige or James Gunn have learned a similar lesson. From my burner iPhone, Niche.
That's the best part.
It is. We've often joked about if you've already given us a 5-star review on one iPhone, like steal your mom's or whatever. Not steal it, but just take it and give us a 5-star review. But like I like
And
that
then give
Niche
it
is
back.
using. Yeah, and then give it back. Sorry, I should complete the sentence. Yeah, that's awesome. I tend to agree with Niche. I used to be in a place, especially with Marvel, where I was like, why don't they connect things? Why am I not getting Quake in game or whatever? Like those things. But
The good old days.
yeah, but here's the thing, and I think about this more. I hate that it is so capitalist dependent on getting art we like, but the level of movie that Endgame is and Infinity War is, and the kind of budgets they had to pull the actors and the production and the post credits, these movies have to be huge. So doing things that narrow the audience that can understand them is not just bad for people who can't see it, but it's also bad for people who haven't seen those things. But it's also bad for the fact that, like, if less people watch these movies, they get less budget, they get less attention, they get less excitement. I still think there's a lot of space for like smaller movies too, but like a movie like Endgame can only come from, enough people wanting to see Endgame.
Sure.
When things have a life cycle, like we've talked about before, people enter things at different points. So you can't just continue one story forever and ever, because it will have a shelf life that doesn't last forever.
Very true. All right, well, let's dive into our first story for today. Man, this one, there's so much in this one that we're just going to have to hit what we can. And we talked about it on MCU Cast. We've already done 2 episodes on some of this stuff, so we've been talking about it for a few weeks now, but Marvel Studios just upped the ante on the future projects with their presentation at D23 in Brazil this past weekend. Condense it and discuss, you say? Absolutely. Here we go. A brand new trailer was shown and released worldwide for Captain America Brave New World with a long look at the character of Isaiah Bradley. Hot off of those Red Hulk heels, a longer Thunderbolts trailer was released that really set a new tone for the film while still leaving us with questions. Also in trailer news, What If Season 3 got a spotlight this week, and the trailer Marvel release declares that this season is the end. The man, the myth, the legend himself, Kevin Feige, also teased attendees, and therefore all of us, with many more tantalizing nuggets, such as the character of Blade will reach the MCU, Queen of our hearts and minds, the Scarlet Witch, will likely return. Feige said the questions are when and how that will happen. Feige hopes that Miles Morales will enter the live-action MCU sometimes after the third animated Spider-Verse movie releases. And finally, the X-Men will, according to Feige, play a major role in the MCU after Secret Wars. It's been a long time since the excitement of El Capitan theater, but does Feige now have us eating out of his hand?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about how 2025 is going to be jam-packed, and Feige did address that at D23. Somebody called him out on this, said, I thought you were rolling back production. Why are you sticking 9 MCU projects out into the world? And he essentially said, well, 2025 is different. We had a lot pushed back, and we had strikes, and we had reshoots and all of this. So 2025 is packed, but 2026 and on, that's where we'll start to really kind of wind it down a little bit. And I do believe him on that front. I think these projects, while we're all very excited for them, you do just have to realize that that is a lot of projects, and people aren't going to see them all, but you hope at least that the movies, the Captain America, the Thunderbolts, the Fantastic Four, that these really help move your franchise forward. So we did see these new trailers for Captain America and Thunderbolts. They didn't really show off a whole lot of new information. There weren't any big reveals that we didn't already know. But I'm really interested in, and this essentially connects back to what we were talking about a second ago, I'm really interested to see what the box office is going to look like for these movies, because to some degree they do feature characters and storylines that were built in part on Disney Plus. And that has been the conversation of how does the Disney Plus character translate to the big screen? And we know that it's not all Disney Plus. We know that Sam has obviously been on the movie screen. We know that Endgame ended with him getting the shield, but then you had this whole other story that was built off screen where he's accepting this role of Captain America. And then you have the same thing over with the Thunderbolts. Again, Yelena was on the screen, Bucky was on the screen, but you have a character like U.S. Agent, for example, like being built off screen during Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it's just this really interesting conversation because we've seen a shadow of it. We saw Miss Marvel, for example, get built on the small screen and then make the jump to the big screen. And the Marvels, we all know how that box office went. It wasn't perfect, but still it's this idea of how does that work, right? Like how do we see these characters that you may or may not be familiar with, which again, Nish kind of talked about a second ago in the review. How is that going to translate to general audiences on the big screen? Can they watch these or feel like they're accessible even if they haven't seen it? Even if they haven't seen since Endgame and they know Chris Evans is not on the screen anymore and they see, oh, it's a new Captain America movie and there's Hulk, but he's red, and there's Captain America, but it's not Chris Evans. Like, are the general public going to feel open to be able to come and see that movie? And I think that's a question, right? I mean, that's an open question. And same with Thunderbolts, right? Like, there's a lot of characters here, and you may or may not recognize some of them. You recognize Bucky, and you might recognize, oh, that's the guy from Stranger Things, and oh, that's Florence Pugh. But then putting it all together, is that enough, right, to like push you into the seat if you're from the general audience? So I think it's a fascinating couple months ahead for Marvel Studios. I imagine Fantastic Four is sort of in another conversation because it's a very different property. Thunderbolts and Captain America are very similar in some ways. They have the grounded action, and I don't think in a perfect world Marvel Studios releases those two movies back to back because they do feel very similar, and I don't know if that will help or hurt either one, right, in the long run in terms of getting people to see the films. But overall, that's the biggest takeaway for me was that, like, what is the future? We've just seen Deadpool and Wolverine this year, so, and we know how Deadpool and Wolverine smashed the box office. So it's just, what can we continue that momentum? You know, these are very different from Deadpool and Wolverine. So can we continue that momentum into a new year?
Speaking of your thoughts on the connection and these being built on Disney Plus, I think it's kind of the tale of two connections, because I think it's so interesting, because every little connection that you have to the MCU is in itself singular. Like there's no two connections between shows where you hand off between show and movie to movie to movie that is the same. It's always about how you decide to do it. And like something that I think works really well looking at these trailers, Sam Wilson is Captain America, right? The last time we saw him, he was handed the shield. If you only watched Endgame, the last time you saw him, he was handed the shield by Steve Rogers. And Bucky says, "That's you, man. That's yours. It's not my shield." Mm-hmm. And that's like, so if you see him show up in this movie, he's the new Captain America. You do not need Falcon Winter Soldier to know that. But then in the Thunderbolts trailer, you've got the opposite problem. It's like you've got Dime Store Cap, John Walker saying, which I loved that call out in the trailer, but him saying, "Bucky? Like, how does this fake Dime Store Cap know anything about Bucky?" Like, there's a weird disconnect there if you only jump from Endgame to this, you know? But I think I'm hoping that they will do enough in these movies to bring those people along, because I know we just talked about this, and I think Niche is totally right in his feedback, in his 5-star review, which is like, I really think they need to find ways to creatively put these characters in situations without advancing the character so far that they're unrecognizable to audiences when they come back, you know, from their TV trips.
Yeah, well, I'll start by addressing the update that we got on Blade, which I felt was so needed. But I wonder about the timing. Should they have done this in closer proximity to taking it off the calendar? And it could have gone either way. Maybe that would have created a scenario where it's like, oh, doth he protest too much? You know, is this an actual thing here? But it also was kind of like, it sucked because it was the butt of a joke. Like, even like, you know, happy Deadpool and Wolverine Day to everybody. But again, that movie had the joke, there's only going to be one Blade. And, you know, you have Wesley Snipes and Deadpool looking right at the camera there. So all that being said, the comments, while it does double down and reaffirm that we're going to get Blade in the MCU, they are a little cagey still. They're not very specific. It doesn't say it's going to be the Mahershala Ali version of Blade. It doesn't say that it's going to be, you know, the version of the movie that's been worked on for so long up until this point. So a lot remains to be seen there. Outside of that, I do want to come back to some of the trailer talk there, because Jay, you mentioned that you didn't think there were a lot of reveals, and that may be true, but for my purposes, looking at that Thunderbolts trailer, I thought it might have been obvious in the last trailer we got, but I felt like we got official confirmation that Val purchased the Avengers Tower. Like, there was dialogue saying, you know,
for sure,
look at the view, think about the battles that have taken place here. So Thunderbolts continues to be the one that I am the most excited for. Even with Fantastic Four in the mix, I'm really excited for Fantastic Four and what that's going to look like. But Thunderbolts, it's the best of both worlds for me. It's doing something new, but also kind of satisfying that itch for that connectivity and the return of characters that we've been talking about here. So, and we know that one's going to be a good mix of some action with some comedy. We know that Red Guardian's going to be a comedic character. Bob seems like he's going to be the source of a lot of comedic relief there too. But I will say, I didn't love the joke that we got in the car where Red Guardian goes to enact, you know, defensive maneuvers, and it's Genuine's pony. It just didn't work for me. So I'm hoping gags like that are kind of few and far between, because, you know, people complain about the Marvel brand of comedy where it just kind of like takes you out. And I've never really been a proponent of that argument. I've never really felt it, but that joke in particular was just like, yeah, this doesn't feel like it fits the scene all that well for me. So
I said this on the MCU cast, but just to address that, I think that this trailer edited that scene in a not very good light. You can tell that the jokes are coming more rapid fire than they do in the scene. Like the editing, there's music pumping behind it, and it's sort of like it kind of goes from joke to joke to joke. And I think the overall tone is seeming like from that trailer, like this is going to be a little too jokey. And I think I think they are avoiding some of the quieter moments in that car where they're talking about other things or they're whatever. That could happen that thing with the pony could happen way before or way after. What, it just depends. Like, it just seemed to me like they truncated that scene in a way that didn't, I think, work. Okay. And that's a trailer edit. I think in the movie it might work better. I like the pony thing. I just have a love for Genuine, and I love
it. I was gonna say, you always get me with a pony needle drop. Like, yeah, I'm
me
sorry.
Too.
Fair enough.
Me too.
Enough. I've probably seen one too many bad karaoke renditions that have soured me off.
Well, that's because you haven't seen me do it.
I guess
and I was definitely like gyrating in my chair as soon as that hit. I loved it, man.
Yeah, clearly you never danced at a middle school dance to Genuine and didn't listen to the lyrics until years later. And then went, wait a minute, I was in 6th grade dancing to this. I was an adult learning that song to play it when I realized he says, "If you're horny, let's do it." It is so close because later in the song he says, jump on it, let's do it. But at the beginning of each chorus he says, if you're horny, let's do it. But it sounds, the way he phrases it, he goes, if you're horny, and it sounds so like jump on it. And like, I for years did not hear if you're horny. And it was like years later till I realized. Sorry. What about you, Haley? We've been talking about
I'm just
pony.
thinking, like, clearly Scotty didn't grow up in the hood like the rest of us did, because we're all like, oh, yeah.
No, listen. Pony is from the hood to the holler. It's everywhere,
It's
clearly.
It's universal.
Scotty just missed
I'm in the hood in a universal way. In the club, we all love the pony. I also love the Thunderbolts trailer. I actually thought that the jokes were more, yes, but I felt like this very kind of malicious sort of undertone to the things that are going on in the movie. And so the first teaser was all jokes. This one was jokes. And then you kind of get this uneasiness that's going on. They've cut it to make it look like Bucky is on Val's leash in a way. And I wonder if that's really true or not. So I'm really excited for that movie. But then the internet just is abuzz with Scarlet Witch will return. I mean, that's all but Kevin Feige confirming that she will be back. Does that mean it will be Elizabeth Olsen? We hope so, but we don't know. I really hold on to that Vision series that's going to come out, and the Vision and the Scarlet Witch, like that's, you go back in comics and there's lots and lots and lots of them in comics together, and it kind of feels like they just are two halves of a whole, literally and figuratively, that you want to see on the screen together. So I think like a Vision series with just maybe the twins isn't super compelling, but a Vision series with the twins and maybe we get a Scarlet Witch is really exciting. So I'm looking forward to that. And then the third thing that really stuck out to me was the Miles Morales hope for live action, because talking about new entry points to franchises, I think that would bring a ton of fresh new people to the franchise who are followers of that character, who is really beloved and really popular. And I just think that'll be a great handoff from Tom Holland Spider-Man to Miles Morales. So yeah, lots of exciting things.
When we know the Young Avengers are being built quietly in the background, we've already seen Miss Marvel reach out to Kate Bishop. I mean, could you imagine a movie with Miles Morales and Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop and Miss Marvel, and then you're pulling in any other random Young Avengers you want to pull in? You're pulling in Joe Locke as Wiccan. I mean, that would really be a huge film, right? If you can get Miles Morales brought into that sort of team-up thing. We saw that worked with Spider-Man, right? Like getting Spider-Man introduced in a team-up movie really blew Civil War up. I mean, it was the height of the MCU already, but the fact that we knew, all right, Spider-Man is coming into this franchise in this movie, and then he's going to get his own live-action movie afterwards. It was a really exciting time. And so I can kind of see a similar approach here with Miles Morales. Like, what if we brought him into a Young Avengers movie as a side character and then gave him his own movie afterwards, set in the MCU, just like we did with Tom Holland? Sony's got to sign up for something like that, I would imagine, with that character. They've seen the success that in Marvel specifically has had with Tom Holland's Spider-Man.
Sure. Yeah. Speaking of, you were talking about Haley, the Wanda and Vision returning and the Vision series. I can't believe we're getting White Vision in What If. Yeah. I know it won't be the same version, clearly, because it's What If. Like, what if White Vision did something else? But we've been so curious about where he is, what's going on, and we're going to get an alternate version of that in the What If series, which is just super exciting. It's so weird. I was so shocked when I'd seen him, but I didn't register. And then me and Jay Scotty were doing the trailer breakdown, and I was just getting through, and I was like, wait, that means we're going to get more White Vision. Crazy. What? Here of all places? It's cool. It's really cool.
They're like, we didn't forget, did you?
Yeah.
They're like, look, Avengers Tower, we got a plan. White Vision, we got a plan. Like, we heard everything you were saying. Just calm down.
Yep. Kate Bishop, we got a plan. Like, all the stuff that What If really is like this place where, like, okay, there are people at Marvel paying attention to all the stuff that they're dropping and not remembering or not pulling back in. We're going to get all this stuff back at some point.
Yeah. Well, at the mention of What If Season 3 and quote-unquote plans within plans, sorry, I'm confusing franchises here, but I do think it's important to address Feige's comments about the X-Men, because, we saw X-Men in the What If trailer, and we saw them in Deadpool and Wolverine. It seems like they're going to factor in. So the fact that he says they're going to be a big thing after Secret Wars, I still have the expectation that we're going to see plenty of X-Men in Secret Wars, because why wouldn't you? But that does make me think that it's probably going to be past iterations, more Fox versions of these characters. Maybe some, in the case of Channing Tatum, some wish fulfillment, some characters that, never were. But then after Secret Wars, we are going to start fresh with like a brand new Marvel Studios version of the X-Men. At least that's what I'm extrapolating here.
I was going to say, I will probably have been right about my 10 years call with the X-Men.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer.
I'm not right about much. I will be right about that.
Well, the way he phrased it, too, if I remember correctly, because we covered this on MCU Cast yesterday, too. The way he phrased the quote, it didn't necessarily say only after. It was like after and maybe during Secret Wars or something like that. Sure. Like, either before or after Secret Wars, they will be a big thing. And I think it's sort of like playing coy with the idea that like they're probably going to be a big thing during, but he's not guaranteeing that. Just trying to keep us on not knowing everything, which I like. I love it. Don't tell me everything. Lie to me. Lie to me.
I know we've been talking about this one for a while, but I'm sorry, I want to go back to the trailers for a second just to give some call outs to some musical stuff. In the Thunderbolts trailer, who was it that said it seemed like Bucky might be on Val's leash? Or the way at least it was cut at Haley, credit where credit's due. I did notice the score there. It sounded very much like Alan Silvestri's Avengers theme, but it was tweaked a little bit. So really appreciated that. Great moment there. But what really stuck out to me with the Brave New World trailer, and I think they've been doing it all along, but it just really resonated with me this time, is with the editing, they do this kind of like and I would just describe it as like tactical. It sounds like, guns being reloaded, kind of like a timer or somebody like suiting up.
It feels like a clock to me.
It works really well.
Yeah, totally. They have had that in other trailers, especially like the prison scene where he goes to visit Isaiah and sort of like it's just good and intriguing, like what's going on.
Yeah, and I love the Marvel Studios logo, but it's cool to see just like Marvel in like white font with a black background, just kind of like almost like a title card. Like seeing those types of change ups from the tradition a little bit, I think was kind of cool.
I'd say both of the trailers, we're talking about music and sound a lot, but like they're both cut extremely well, where the action is hitting all the beats of the music and the sounds, and that's just very effective marketing when you're doing action trailers especially. And I remember way back in the day, Matt, you and Jeff talking about Captain Marvel and that her big fight scene doesn't hit on the needle drops, and these trailers are like turned up to 1,000,000 with that, and I think it's awesome. Sure. It gets my blood pumping. I'm like, let's go.
It's like since Edgar Wright has done what he's done, I feel like if you have a needle drop and you don't edit to the beat like you should, like it's just not working. Like we've moved past needle drops that don't like edit well with the beat. Like just you got to design your action. You got to design, if you're gonna use a needle drop, like make it work. And I think of Edgar Wright in a lot of things. He gets a lot of credit for Baby Driver, but if you go all the way back to Shaun of the Dead and like some of those scenes where he's like the "Don't Stop Me Now" scene where they're all like rhythmically hitting the zombies, dun, 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 dun. It's so good. Anyway. Let's move on. We covered a lot on this one, so let's see what we got up next. It's so much to cover, and this week, honestly, like we've been looking forward, looking at the script and everything. It's like this week is going to be a long episode because we have a lot of things to cover, and a lot of great things to cover, a lot of exciting things.
Yeah.
It's the age of Dave Filoni, as Lucasfilm has brought his Star Wars Rebels co-creator Simon Kinberg on board to develop a new trilogy of films in the galaxy far, far away. The new trilogy will not be a continuation of the 9-film Skywalker saga, but will feature new characters and new stories. Though insiders say this may be up for debate. Regardless, don't count out characters from other corners of the universe showing up. Kinberg's producing credits include Logan, the first 2 Deadpool movies, acting as a consultant for The Force Awakens, and he's involved in the upcoming adaptation of Stephen King's The Running Man starring Glenn Powell. Can a new trilogy find success in Star Wars?
I love seeing a Star Wars Rebels creator in charge of something else at Star Wars, because that still remains my favorite content in all of Star Wars, regardless. It's just really, really, really amazing storytelling that I always strongly tell everybody to watch, because it gets you a lot of ground covered in Star Wars. It introduces a lot of cool lore that's made it into live action stuff, and that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. So anyway, he's one of those creators, and so I think that's exciting. I wonder if it will not be confusing to have a trilogy of movies that's not Skywalker. I'm not for it or against it. I just don't know what it will do to people who want to watch the movies. Because if you say we're doing a Star Wars trilogy, that's right where your mind goes, is the Skywalker stuff. So it's kind of, if that's what they're going to do, that's sort of a gamble. And depending on what direction they take it in, it will or won't pay off. I think that Star Wars movies are probably going to do well regardless, even though Solo was like one of the lower, box office and received ones. It's still a Star Wars movie, and it still did really well at the end of the day. So I'm curious. I'm excited about the creative team behind it. His credits kind of speak for themselves. He's been on some very successful projects. And this Running Man one that we've talked about over and over every week about the cast that keeps growing, I mean, that's looking like it's going to be a big thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic, only because this is all we know. So there's not a whole lot to go on in terms of really forming an opinion.
Yeah, the trilogy thing is interesting because when this news came out, all the trades reported on it. And the Hollywood Reporter in their report said that their sources were telling them that it would not be connected to the Skywalker saga, that it would be in a new corner of the Star Wars universe. And then Deadline came back and said, actually, our sources say that it will directly follow the rise of Skywalker, and it will be connected as effectively episodes 10, 11, and 12 in the Skywalker saga. And that's where it's been ever since this news came out. It's been in the middle. No one, Lucasfilm, Disney, no one has come out and confirmed this. This is all still being reported by the trades. And what that tells me is that Disney is still divided on what that means, on what type of films are going to tell what types of stories. We already know that Lucasfilm has a lot of irons in the fire. We know that there's this rumored Taika Waititi film. We know that Patty Jenkins she brought up Rogue Squadron again not that long ago, saying it's still happening. We know that Sean Levy was offered a Star Wars film. We know that there's just this Filoni thing happening where you've got the Mandalorian movie that he's creating, and then another supposed team-up movie that's going to bring in Ahsoka and all this other type of stuff onto the big screen. So you've got all these parallel movies. From what we can tell, none of these creatives are being told that anything is necessarily off limits. Like there's not a Feige sort of looking over their shoulder and telling them what they can and can't talk about. And so you've got the potential there, I think, for some clashing maybe at the end of the day. So hopefully what you really need is you need that Filoni. If it's Filoni, if it's Kathleen Kennedy, if it's whoever, someone's got to be over top of this. Somebody's got to be over top of the concurrent storylines. Even Donald Glover's come out and talk about, well, we're still thinking about doing Lando, and maybe it's on, maybe it's not. Who knows? Like, it's just a lot, right? And who's going to go through it? Who's going to figure out who's doing what? Are we doing the main trilogy? Like, those are all questions that need to be answered. And then at the end of the day, Kinberg is a really interesting choice. And I think if you're pushing for the hope and the positivity, Haley, you laid it out well. It's Rebels, right? Like that's what you look to. You look at Rebels and you say, all right, and his name's all over it. He wasn't just some random producer. He wrote a ton of the episodes. He was extremely involved in the writing of Rebels. So if you're looking at it positively, you look at that, right? if you want to look at it and be a little bit nervous, which I think is okay, I think you could look at it and say, all right, what other things has he done? All right, you mentioned some of the things he's been a producer on, but he's only a producer on some of the successful stuff like Deadpool and Logan and all that because he was involved directly with X-Men. And so he had no creative control in Deadpool. He had no creative control in Logan. He did have one movie where he had full creative control of the X-Men saga. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but it was Dark Phoenix. All right. So he had the reins for Dark Phoenix. And I saw Dark Phoenix, and it does not inspire a whole lot of confidence for me personally, thinking about, giving someone the reins to the trilogy, right? So again, it's all of this. I'm not saying it's one way or the other. I think it's just important to look at the person's body of work and say, all right, here's kind of what they have going for them. Here's why you might want to have an eyebrow raised. And then at the end of the day, like, I just have questions like, what are we doing with, if we're doing this trilogy, if we're connecting it 10, 11, 12, what are we doing with the character of Rey? To me, she's the main, the cupboard's kind of bare, right? Like, we're done with Luke, we're done with Obi-Wan, we're done with Han Solo, we're done with Leia, we're done with all these characters that have carried the franchise for so long. And so what are we going to do now with the one character who has had a runtime on screen, has carried over these movies, and that's Rey. And it's like, what are you going to do? Are you going to do the Solo movie that we've talked about that's been in the news for months and months now? Are you going to make her like an Obi-Wan figure to sort of hand it off to the next generation? Like, what does that look like? And so a lot of information still got to come out about this. Ultimately, I'm excited because I love Star Wars, but there's just a lot of questions I feel like need answered here by Lucasfilm.
Yeah. My big hope for this, and looking at his body of work and his connection on Rebels, is that he is not the director of these movies. He's coming on board to develop. I really hope that Star Wars can become a sort of writer. If they're going to make a trilogy, I want it to be a writer-driven trilogy. I think that's important for any trilogy. The way they did it with JJ handing off to Rian Johnson, handing off back to JJ, I think it was like the biggest mistake. And having those creators have as much creative control as they had. Pick great directors and give them an episode of your 3-episode TV show that you're making that is writer driven. Like that I think that's kind of what they did with the original trilogy. Even Lucas directed, I believe, 4 and 6, but he didn't direct 5, right?
He actually only directed 4.
4.
Oh, he didn't direct 5 or 6.
He wrote 4 and 5.
Yes.
Oh, he didn't write 6.
I don't think
the
he did,
people will
actually.
come for me. I can't remember.
I'm pretty confident he
You
was not
call
one of the
yourself
main
a Star
writers.
Wars fan? 1-star review for not
Just
knowing
delusional over here.
Well, either way, I don't know. My point is, I think that Lucas was a good creative driving force behind that first trilogy with the idea for what was going to happen, even if he didn't write the last one or whatever. But it was passed between directors, and I think that is something that a good series does, is the writing stays consistent and the plan stays consistent. And I think that, obviously you can change midstream if you need to, but the changing and then changing back was a real problem for that sequel trilogy.
Well, I think that's less about writing and more about overall vision.
Sure.
Because George Lucas had the vision for Star Wars, and it extended into 3 original movies, even if he wasn't pinning all of them exactly. But then with the sequel trilogy, there was no vision. There was just, we're gonna Disney owns Star Wars now, and that's what happened. And so,
well, he directed the 3 prequels, correct?
He did.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that was a problem too. I think like not getting the
that was a problem because George was like, technology, and that was all that mattered.
and being a Star Wars god in a room where no one's going to question you is a big problem. And I think having different cooks in the kitchen can be really valuable as long as you have that strong vision undergirding it, like writers or Lucas himself. But like when you pass it between directors and have a vision that just bounces around with no overarching vision, I think that's the problem. So I'm hoping that Simon Kinberg, especially with his connection to Rebels, maybe Filoni helps him, whatever, like they get behind this thing and make it a really strong vision for that, and then give it to directors who direct well and let them do their thing.
Who wants a hot take? Hot take.
I'm
Get
ready.
your hot
Serve it
take
up.
over here.
Serve it up.
Go, Scotty. Go, Scotty.
I believe that Age of Apocalypse or X-Men Apocalypse is worse than Dark Phoenix.
It's
I
almost
think I'd
like
probably go
just
with
a
that.
milkworm take because they're both so terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both terrible.
Yeah.
I agree.
That being said, my knee-jerk reaction was probably pretty similar to a lot of fans out there. Simon Kinberg, the guy that ran the Fox X-Men franchise into the ground, no thank you. But after contemplating it for a little while, I did become more optimistic, and I think all of those reasons have been unpacked pretty well. This guy has been a fixture in Hollywood for a long time for a reason. He has worked on some of the, most successful IP out there, and I think they see something in him. So, my chief complaint about that trilogy the previous trilogy we were talking about, The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker was there was no plan going in. So I think you look at a guy like Simon Kinberg and he can provide that framework. I don't expect him to go the distance and have his name attached as the final writer. He might get a story by, maybe some screenplay credits or something like that, but they're going to bring in other writers as well to, beef up and doctor the framework that he provides. And then, I don't think he's going to be directing anything. I think he learned his lesson, unfortunately, even though I do think everybody should be given another opportunity. I think it was just too much with Dark Phoenix being his directorial debut. Maybe he should work on some indies before he wants to come back, behind the camera in that capacity. So all that being said, again, I am optimistic, but I would be remiss if I didn't voice just a little bit of a concern here. Again, absence makes the heart grow fonder. So we know we have a lot of Star Wars films on the way. So this is all going to come down to timing for me, because we got that last, Star Wars saga film in 2019. And from 2005's Revenge of the Sith to 2015's The Force Awakens, that's 10 years. I personally, as a Star Wars fan, I need at least 10 years from 2019 to the start of this trilogy. I don't want anything before 2029, but that's just me.
Kinberg also
Seems
doing
so
a
far
Star
away.
Trek film. So that's kind of weird, right? He's doing a Star
That
Trek
is
movie
weird.
and he's doing Star Wars.
I feel burned by that, and I don't like it. I think JJ came into Star Trek and did a Star Trek movie and then a Star Wars movie, and it was clear from his Star Trek movie that he wanted to do a Star Wars movie.
He was on
not
record
interested.
saying as much.
Yeah. He was a Star Wars fan, not a Star Trek fan, and he made Star Trek more Star Warsy, and that's just not the path for Star Trek. I like those movies okay, but they're definitely diminishing returns, and they just don't have a lot of depth to them.
Which is interesting because, not to harp on Star Wars Rebels, but Star Wars Rebels is so good. The storytelling is so, I don't know. So it's shocking to me that this guy can't seem to hack it in live action or something. I don't know. It's there's a disconnect there.
He has a really strange body of work, and clearly he's been a powerful producer. He's on tons of projects as a producer. But you look at his actual writing. He does a ton of screenplays, but not like Scotty said. He doesn't actually end up penning the actual script in the end. He's starts a lot of projects and then hands them off. Right. And so
maybe he is the visionary, and he just needs to be that guiding hand like you. Yeah.
Or he's just the guy who kind of breaks the story, then hands it off to Filoni or somebody else or whoever can write a really. I just hope it's writer driven. That's really what I want. I just want vision behind these movies. Whew, guys. Well, we have been going a while now. I think we need to take a quick break, and we will be right back. We got 2 more feature stories to go, and one of them is a doozy. It is a doozy, you guys. Some Black Panther 3 possibilities on the horizon. So we'll be right back with that. Welcome back to Multiverse News. Let's just dive right back in. We got so much further to go on this here episode. Let's see. This is a crazy wild thing we have here. In a wild and unofficial move, Denzel Washington revealed during the Gladiator 2 press tour that he is being written into the 3rd Black Panther movie that will be directed by Ryan Coogler. Development on Black Panther 3 film has not been announced by Marvel Studios in any official capacity, but wow, what a rumor to start, Denzel. If this news turns out to be true, what are our hopes and dreams for Denzel in a Black Panther movie?
Well, hopefully the Feige snipers don't get him after this one, because I can't believe he said this. This was on a Good Morning show in Australia, just like totally random place that he decided to drop this news. That
he was like, I'm in the future. It's okay.
And yeah, he's just like casually like, yeah, Black Panther 3, of course, this movie that's never been announced or confirmed by anyone, and I'm going to be in it, and I'm one of the biggest movie stars in the entire world. And it's interesting. He was talking a lot about kind of reflecting on his late career here and how he wants to end his career as an actor. And he mentioned he's doing this Gladiator 2 movie. He talked about wanting to do a little bit of Shakespeare. He talks about how he's played characters from Shakespeare like Othello and stuff his whole life on Broadway, and how he wants to continue doing that to wrap up his career. But this was mentioned in that conversation of, I'm also doing this Black Panther thing. And so to me, it does speak to the idea that Denzel probably doesn't want to come into the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a fixture. Like, it didn't really give off that vibe to me. Could be wrong, obviously, but it didn't really give off the vibe that he wants to come in as like Magneto or something, like some huge character that'll be in all these movies. It really played to me like it was a one-off role, that it probably didn't even really seem like it was a character that is being pulled from a comic, almost like he's writing himself in, or he's being written into this movie as an original character. And, if Denzel calls you, if you're Ryan Coogler and Denzel calls you and says, I want to be a Black Panther 3, like, you write him into Black Panther 3. Like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, you give him a role in that film. And I think it's perfect. I mean, I love the idea of just Denzel and what he's done just as an actor, and being able to come into this franchise, which has done so much to advance, particularly conversations around race and conversations around inclusion, and how Black Panther has really been sort of what you look to when you think about like doing inclusion and doing diversity in film, and what does it look like as a masterclass. People bring up Black Panther, and so the idea of bringing Denzel, an actor who's been around for decades, representing African Americans on screen and some of the biggest productions in movie history, for him to come out and be in Black Panther 3, I think is really cool. It's a cool connection. He did have a relationship with Chadwick Boseman. He was a mentor to Chadwick Boseman, and so the idea that he could come into this franchise, which has been handed off from Chadwick, is great, and brings a lot of threads together in some way. So again, I'm shocked that he said this out loud, and that it made it into the world. But hey, Black Panther 3, bring it on.
Yeah, this is nuts. This is crazy. And I feel like it's the kind of slip of the tongue that feels like a real confirmation to me. Like, I mean, obviously this does not have a stamp of approval from Marvel, and they develop movies all the time, but what I think it is confirmation of is that they are actively working on a Black Panther 3, even if it never goes anywhere, even if they're not ready to announce it, because it's not like, if Denzel is being written into it, there's something to be written into. And like, I could talk about this for a while, because what is Black Panther 3? Where is it going to fit? We still have an untitled movie in this next phase, like it's only like 2 or 3 years away. There's a slot that's still open. Black Panther could fit there. Or is it something that's after Secret Wars? Is it something that's establishing the new universe and how it's going to work? Like, I'm really floored by the idea that there is a Black Panther 3 and Denzel. I've been begging on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. We've been talking about Denzel in Marvel for a long time. I've been saying I think he'd be the perfect Magneto. I think he would just be amazing in that role. But like, we've gone on and on about that over on MCU Cast over the years. But I'd kind of let that idea go away in my head, because I didn't. We're getting real close, and we hadn't heard anything about that. But man, him just being someone in Black Panther 3, like, that's just real exciting, and I immediately want to start like writing the movie in my head, and my first thing goes to, he's a protectionist sect. He's part of a protectionist sect that's like pushing back against the reforms that T'Challa did, because they opened themselves up to the world and immediately got attacked in a huge way. So there's going to be like protectionism forming, and I can totally see him as like an older Wakandan trying to like rein in Shuri, like politically or whatever. Like, that could totally see him in that sort of like role, and sort of antagonist, but someone who is with purposes of trying to protect his people. I just think he's so good. I'm excited.
Do you think he would do a Wakandan accent? Because I look at Gladiator 2 where everybody's got some kind of accent and he's just still rocking his American accent. So Denzel does what Denzel wants to do and he's okay.
No, I think Denzel would be kind of like
Michael B. Jordan's character.
Yeah, Michael B. Jordan's character, Killmonger, who like...
Or one of the War Dogs or something.
Right. Well, maybe he's been off on assignment. That's maybe why we have never seen him. Maybe he's been off on assignment doing like... Yeah, he's working out in the world, and then he comes back and he's like, what have you done to the place that I helped build? I've been out in the world protecting this place from all these threats, and I come back and I see you've let it get flooded by these other people, and you've revealed us to the world. You've destroyed what we had, and like I'm gonna try to stop you. You know,
to restore order, I must have power. It's a line right out of the Gladiator 2 trailer for you. But I'm not so concerned for Denzel. I don't think he's signed an NDA at this point. So hopefully, if this is all true and does pan out, he didn't shoot himself in the foot and effectively lose this opportunity. I actually look at the trades, and it makes me wonder how much under Marvel's thumb are these trades, because we've seen in the past where stuff like this has been picked up. They will say Marvel has declined to comment, Disney has declined to comment, but this they're not even touching. So I do get the sense that they don't. I think you're right. I think it is true.
Marvel has declined to comment.
Now they have started posting that he commented. So like Deadline put out a report.
Okay, all right. I hadn't seen those.
But it took a long time. I mean, it was just a couple hours ago. Like it took all day. Yeah, it took all day to get there. And it was like it tiptoes. It's like Denzel said this about this maybe happening movie or whatever, you know, like it's not, you know, they're not a confirmation. And I bet they didn't even ask Marvel Studios. They just put it out there.
Yeah.
I couldn't share this article in the group chat fast enough today when I saw it because, and it's funny, like on Sunday, I don't know, I needed to cry, which you guys are men, so you don't do that so much, but like I just needed to cry, and so I put Wakanda Forever on because, God, that movie makes me cry, but it's so good, and I remember being like, oh, I miss this world, like we need this back in the MCU, because I feel like Wakanda and the Black Panther family and franchise and characters like is a very grounding force in the MCU, even though it's like this mystical, magical, technologically driven, amazing place. Like there's something very real about it. And I hope that it might be that unnamed movie, because I think that if you leave it too long, you're like, well, where are the Wakandans? Like they're too big of a power to be left out of the playing field. And so, yeah, I was just like, this is shocking. And what was he thinking? And he's probably also thinking, I'm Denzel Washington. Like, what's she going to do? Like, I would be too if I was him, you know. Power to Denzel. He's the best.
There's like impetuous young Marvel actors who make this mistake, and then there's like older Marvel actors who are like, what are they going to do to me?
Yeah, like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Fire me? You can't fire me. I'm Denzel Washington. So
I feel like there's been past stories that were similar with like other actors that are like, just, I'm saying what I want to say. They talk to me about this movie, but I don't care.
He's like a Harrison Ford. Like you just... They can do what they want. So yeah, I'm excited. I hope this is true. I want this to be true. And I want us to see Wakanda on the big screen again sooner rather than later.
Well, and we know we have a T'Challa in the MCU. We have the son of T'Challa who is named T'Challa. And I think that was probably set out there very intentionally, that character would take on the mantle of Black Panther at some point. And so theoretically, you could take this and you could set it at a certain time and find a wiggle room there where you cast someone who is probably like in their early 20s or something, but they're playing like a 16, 17-year-old person, and you could theoretically write and create the next Black Panther. I would imagine Ryan Coogler does not want to keep making Black Panther movies forever. He probably wants to hand off this franchise at some point to someone else or to Marvel Studios, and I could see him using this film as an opportunity to set up a new age of Black Panther, set up a new character, and set up T'Challa of the future. So, yeah, I mean, Black Panther, we know what Black Panther Wakanda Forever did and what it had to do and the story that it had to tell and the directions that it had to take, and it did so just brilliantly. But I think at some point we'll probably see a turn back of this franchise to a T'Challa, right? To the son of T'Challa in the universe, and a picking up of the mantle of some sorts.
What if he's like, to take Matt's idea a little further, what if he was like a war dog that was sent on like experimental stuff, and like he ended up traveling multiversally or something like that, or time travel, and comes back, like that would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Or even just a Wakandan from another universe who like maybe his Wakanda fell for similar reasons, and he almost like a Thanos type situation where his planet died because of lack of resources. So now he's on this but he steps into our multiverse, our universe, and he's like, what did you do? Like, how did
or
you?
Or like a Wakanda without the meteorite, like.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh.
This could be so cool. You can call us Kevin. We're totally available for ideas.
multiversenewscast@gmail.com, Kevin. We know you're listening.
All right. Well, I'm just so pumped for this, but I guess we'll move on to this next thing. We got so much more good stuff. HBO released a sizzle reel for their 2025 shows that will stream on Max, showcasing footage from an astounding number of their shows. Favorites like White Lotus, The Last of Us, Hacks, and The Gilded Age were highlighted alongside upcoming shows Welcome to Derry, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and The Chair Company, to name a few. Today, Disney also shared a sizzle reel this week, featuring, of course, our anticipated Marvel and Star Wars projects, as well as some of their other darlings like The Bear, Goosebumps, The Handmaid's Tale, and more. What a wealth of content we're in for next year. Who wants to conduct the hype train?
Just call me Jay Sizzle St. Clair, because I'm here for it.
You've been waiting for that all night.
All day.
You're like, I can't wait to hit him with this.
It's been cooking for a little bit, I will admit.
Been sizzling, you might say.
Yeah, that's right.
It's been sizzling under the surface.
Yeah. What a week for trailers. And we're not even done here. We have more to talk about in the lightning round, but I thought both of these sizzle reels were fantastic, super effective. Apple, I think you can look at both of these streamers and take a lesson to showcase your stellar content, because these were just fantastic again. And I think Disney did win. If this is going to be a competition, I think they won this one just by being a little more focused. Max certainly, spread a wide shot and gave us a lot of things to look forward to, some that I've never even heard of, like The Chair Company. No idea what that's about, but that comedian that's in there, what is it? Tim
Robinson.
Tim Robinson, yes.
Yeah.
Was that him? I thought that was him for a second. Yeah. Like I saw a clip. It's like, was that Tim Robinson? But it went by so fast.
Yeah, so I find that really intriguing. Welcome to Derry looks really, really good. But again, going back to Disney, we effectively got our first trailer for Andor Season 2 within this reel. It was kind of a la what we had from Daredevil Born Again a couple of weeks ago. So again, I've only had the opportunity to watch this thing like once or twice. So the strong impression that I was left with was really the dialogue between Andor and Stellan Skarsgård's character. Like, you're thinking like a soldier, you're thinking like a thief, you need to start thinking like a leader. And that just really excites me for the trajectory of this character, really getting him to the place that we saw him in Rogue One, because I love Rogue One and he was my favorite character in Rogue One. So I think Star Wars, whenever it is delving into this more adult and dark tone like we saw in Season 1, it's just a version of Star Wars that I want to live in and relish. So looks incredible.
Which bring up that is interesting too, because I don't think he ever reaches the point of feeling like a leader in the future story. So like, I like the idea that he's trying to push it. Like, this Skarsgård's character is trying to build an army, build this resistance, and he sees something in Andor that might not be there. He still sees Andor is going to be useful, and we all know he will be. But like, maybe he has designs for Andor that aren't exactly what is going to end up happening. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that's really interesting. Like, he's pushing him to be a leader, and I'm not sure that's really his role. It's cool. My biggest thing that surprised me was that The Handmaid's Tale is still a thing. I really thought that ended.
I think really this is the last season coming up. I saw
the other season, and I thought that was the final season. I really did. I don't remember how it ended, but I remember it feeling final. But I guess it wasn't. And it's been a while since the last season too. So that's great. I like The Handmaid's Tale. and it's pertinent right now. Like I think it's great. It's great that that's coming back, but I didn't know it was. And the other one is The Rehearsal. That surprised me.
Yes,
I didn't know that was getting a season 2. He did that, and then he did that other show for Max. What was that called?
The Curse, and he being Nathan Fielder. Yes,
Nathan Fielder. When he moved on to The Curse, I kind of assumed The Rehearsal was done because a lot of times if you're working on a series, you don't go work on another one. But I'm really excited The Rehearsal's coming back.
Yeah,
my brain went kind of spinny watching all of these with all of the trailers we've gotten, all of the news, and it's because we're entrenched in this stuff for this show, and so you start to get a little overstimulated with the news about the content. But I remember when we were talking about the Emmys, and I was talking about that we are in a time of like golden television again with streaming and premiere content, and I think these 2 reels and the trailers we've seen and the content we're getting from Apple and other streamers is just proof positive of that. So it's cool that we're not in a time where it's like, oh, I don't have anything to watch. Like you can always find something amazing to watch from all of these creative people that are working with these companies to put out these products. So even though it's overwhelming, I think it's exciting because there's truly something for everybody out there right now.
I had forgotten that they had shot The Bear season 3 and The Bear season 4 back to back, and we talked about that when it happened, that they essentially shot both of these seasons together on set, and then we're going to put them out relatively close. And so seeing Jeremy Allen White pop up and Ayo Edebiri pop up, I was like, oh, well, clearly they're just showing off The Bear season 3. But then it just hit me again, like, wait a minute, no, this is The Bear season 4. Like, this is another season of this coming right around the corner. So they're ready for their yearly Emmy run, I guess, again, as a comedy or whatever. And we'll have to have that same conversation again. But
we're sizzling, not burning, Jay.
Overall, a lot of good stuff here. I mean, I continue to remain extremely excited for what Max has in store, particularly with The Last of Us Season 2. And then we're going to talk about the Andor release date here in the lightning round, but it's right around the corner. And then some footage in this from Ironheart too, right? So which we've seen. So yeah, both streamers just have a lot happening in 2025, but good stuff and stuff to be excited about.
Yeah. Yeah. I really think we are nearing another golden age of just like content this year. And I have felt really excited about content in the past with all of these companies, but like, yeah, this year just feels like a lot of stuff that can't miss to me. Like great creative teams, great directions, and things that have like learned lessons. I think Marvel has learned lessons from some of its previous content, and some of the stuff's going to be even better this year. Like I just don't see almost any of these shows missing, and it's going to be so much content to watch and enjoy. It's going to be a good year.
Yeah. Through the course of this conversation, so many things have come back to me, like Alien Earth, the FX series from Noah Hawley. We got our most significant look at that. Like, it's clear that these xenomorphs that are on Earth are the byproduct of some kind of craft falling to Earth, and of course they go in and investigate. But again, I'm a big Glenn Powell fan. I'm not necessarily the biggest sports fan, but this Chad Powers series looks hilarious. Yeah, I'm so into it.
Yeah. The root of that is famous Giants quarterback Eli Manning went undercover at they take college players and they put them into this thing called the Combine, where they try out for NFL teams essentially for the draft. And there was this whole shtick where Eli Manning dressed up and pretended to be this walk-on. He had already retired at this point, but he walked in and was just throwing these like bombs, like 60-yard passes, like perfect passes down the field. And everybody was like, "Who is this guy?" Like and he just looked ridiculous, just like done up in the prosthetics. They're like, he looked like Uncle Rico, and but he called himself Chad Powers, and everyone's like, who is this Chad Powers guy? So the idea that they're going to make a Glenn Powell-centered show about a character that Eli Manning was pretending to be for a joke is really like a lot of layers of funny.
So
that is weird. That is weird and layered. I love it.
Well, Glenn Powell's Twisters co-star Anthony Ramos, he popped up in the Ironheart footage as well, and at first glance, I thought he was a Harry Potter student.
The cloak, I can see it.
Yeah,
getting your Max and your Disney wires crossed.
Yeah.
All right, well, gosh, guys, we have such a big lightning round coming. We got Stranger Things, Fallout, The Penguin, Harry Potter, and more on Multiverse News right after this quick break. Welcome back to Multiverse News. What's going on, everybody? Y'all excited for this lightning round?
Oh yeah, serve it up.
You know what would make us all do a little better though? Raise our spirits, help us carry on through these episodes and keep working so hard to make this wonderful content just for you. And that is if you would go to patreon.com/multiverse newscast and support the show. It's $4 a month, and we work really hard on the show, and I think we bring you quality stuff into your ears every week and your eyes. We make this thing video.
Yeah, the holidays are coming up. There may be some Patreon exclusive stuff coming your way.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah,
so.
for sure.
Think about it like $1 an episode. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
Just a little tip in the tip jar.
All your geeky news for $1 tip every week. It's good stuff. So check that out. Patreon.com/multiverse newscast. And let's move on to that wonderful, exciting lightning round. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Right after the Spotify poll, last week we asked, other than Daredevil, what 2025 Marvel show is most exciting for you? And we got 5.7% of you said Eyes of Wakanda.
That was
13.2% of you said Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. 22.6% of you said Marvel Zombies. 28.3% said Ironheart, and 30.2% said Wonder Man.
It's a pretty nice breakdown.
It really is. It splits up a lot.
I was surprised Marvel Zombies 22.6 seemed a little high, just because we just don't really know anything about that. I mean, we have the one What If episode, and
but
then
zombies.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah,
but that was
zombies
surprising to me. I kind of figured if you asked me which one's going to be the lowest, I would have said, well, probably Marvel Zombies. But clearly, some people out there are feeling what they're putting down.
Yeah, for sure. I think I might have guessed that too. Yeah, that's a good point.
I was a little surprised by how, right out of the gate, how popular Ironheart was, because I'm excited for it too. It's going to have some of the most crossover with the films in terms of the character of Riri Williams there, but it's still a little unproven to me, and we've heard a lot about some of the behind the scenes reworks and stuff like that. It's gotten pushed back a couple of times, so I do have my concerns and hesitations for it, but apparently people really liked what they saw, and I do think the additional footage that we saw in the sizzle reel we just talked about did do a lot to get me even more excited for it.
Yeah, me too. It looks good. I'm with Wonder Man, which I think it did win out. I was just impressed with how split the vote was. I really think that we have a lot of animation fans. Clearly, the animation did end up at the bottom, but if you add up all the percentages, it's pretty close. But between the animation and the live action stuff, so pretty cool. All right, let's move on to our lightning round. We got a lot of great stories for you guys, and the way this works is I'm going to read one of these stories, and then we are going to, as a group, have a chance to claim that story by shouting out our name as the buzzer, and whoever claims it gets to respond to that story. It's just a way we use to cover a lot of stories really fast, and once per lightning round, we will take a rebuttal if we want it. All right, here we go. Netflix has released a video confirming that the 5th and final season of Stranger Things will release in 2025 and will be 8 episodes long. The video also confirmed the titles for each episode.
Jay, this is exciting. I love Stranger Things, and these episode titles are good and catchy and snappy, and I just continue to think this will be Netflix's biggest release of next year and one of the biggest streaming releases ever, knowing that it's the final season of this essentially cornerstone show of the service. So exciting stuff. Nothing beats hearing that music again.
Macaulay Culkin has joined the Season 2 cast of Prime Video's Fallout in a recurring role, sources tell Deadline.
Scotty? Credit card? No problem. Sorry, I had to do a Home Alone reference, but no. Not a lot to go off of here, but we talked about Fallout on Always Watching. The three of us here, between Matt, Jay, and myself, really enjoyed it, excited for Season 2, and I think Macaulay Culkin, he makes a lot of sense. He's kind of a weird guy as he's gotten older and chosen certain roles. So I think he would fit in perfectly in the world of Fallout. Be it if he's a vault dweller, if he's a mutant, if maybe he's a clandestine politician or something like that. I think he could fit in anywhere.
Deadline did mention that they think he's playing some sort of like genius role or something, like some sort of type of like that very smart person. We know that the next season is gonna be towards a particular video game that happened. I don't want to spoil anything in case people want to watch Fallout, but with the way that it ended. So I think that I don't know. I have an idea of who he might be, but
interesting. Okay.
But I think the idea that it's a recurring role is exciting. I think like it's not a one-off. It's not a gag. He's probably going to be in this thing for the whole season.
Cool. Speaking of video games, a Mass Effect TV series based on the video game franchise is officially in development at Amazon MGM Studios, Variety has learned.
Scotty, I've only dabbled with the Mass Effect games. My younger brother, was a big fan, at least of the first couple there. So I think this makes a lot of sense. We've talked about in the waning age of the superhero, franchise, or them being the number one movies, what is going to be the new it thing, and video games are certainly making a strong case for themselves. But from what I recall, these are RPGs, so they are very much choice-driven, with some of the endings of the games having like hugely impactful ramifications there. So it'll be interesting to see how they decide to tackle that, and if it'll be, set before the events of the video games or far after to kind of avoid some of that stuff, or they just plant their flag in the ground and say this is the canon going forward, kind of like Fallout has done. But I think it's right by piece, so I'll be looking forward to it.
That's how you get hashtag not my Mass Effect trending on Twitter.
The next book in the Marvel crime series was announced and will be called Enemy of My Enemy, featuring Daredevil, and is written by best-selling author Alex Segura. The adult novel will be available July 29th, 2025.
Haley, I've talked a lot about these new Marvel adult novels they've been putting out, but the first Marvel crime novel was my favorite one, and it was Jessica Jones Breaking the Dark. So I'm super excited for this one, and I think the third one is going to be focusing on Luke Cage. So we're getting kind of a Defenders theme with these crime ones, and yeah, I already pre-ordered it. I'm all in.
Warner Brothers has announced that the release date for Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17, starring Robert Pattinson, has shifted release dates from January 31st, 2025 to April 18th, 2025. Big move up.
Jay, this is the third time this movie's moved release dates. It was supposed to come out later, or really right around nowish, I think, and then it got pushed back because of the writer's strike and the actor's strike, and then now has been pushed back again. So we'll get to see it eventually, I guess. We did see a trailer a couple weeks ago for this, and it looks kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness. I said big move up. It's a big move back. Goodness. 3 months. Not bad, but it is moved back. I for some reason saw January and thought July. My bad.
I'll chime in with a quick tiny but. As I understand, a part of this move is also to make room for the Michael Jackson biopic, but I do think it's a vote of confidence for this film because, again, January, doesn't have the reputation for being a dump month as it did, not that long ago. But still, April is a much better time slot for a movie like this. And as I understand, it also opens it up for more of those premium format screens like IMAX and your Dolby and what have you.
I'm going to tiny butt this too and just say, I think this movie looks really good and I'm really excited for it. It has nothing to do with the time change of it, but like I hope that you're right in moving it gets in front of more eyeballs because obviously it's, sci-fi and it's social commentary. It's stuff I really enjoy, but like, it also just looks really funny and clever and cute and weird and kind of offbeat, and I just think it looks cool. And a interesting role for Robert Pattinson. He seems a little goofy in it, which I don't know. I don't know that I've seen him play Goofy. Has he played Goofy? Anybody? Oh,
he was in Twilight.
But he was taking himself so serious in that.
Yeah, that's
was
far
he?
From
Have you
goofy.
seen the way he sits down with the two little fingers? I mean,
no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, go look. You'll go look after this.
Have you ever
I'll find
heard,
something and send it to you.
I know this is the longest episode ever, but have you ever heard the story about Robert Pattinson and the stalker and how he got rid of his stalker? Have you ever heard this? It's fantastic. He had a stalker who would who was just obsessed with him and like it was outside of his house every day and all this. And so he walked up to her and asked if she wanted to go to dinner. and went to dinner with her, and he said that she never talked to him again because he was so boring at dinner. Like, and that's just his real personality. Like, he was like, I'm just going to actually have real, like, he wasn't trying to be boring. It was just like, he was like, I think I was just off-putting to her because he's just weird and out there. And she was
That's
like,
amazing.
This is not the guy I thought he was. And she just never talked to him again. So, you know, Robert Pattinson.
I know how to drive people away. Be around them.
I think that was where the story came out. He was like, I'm not really somebody who has a lot of friends. Like, let me tell you about this.
That's so good. Yeah, I don't know. After The Batman and being so excited for that, and I recently saw, I think I was watching Max, and I saw a trailer for The Batman again, and I was like, man, I kind of love him in that role. And his Inception role is really great.
Tenet.
Oh, you're right. You're totally right. I'm mixing up his character and Tom Hardy's character for some reason. But yeah, you're right. Tenet.
Mustn't be afraid to imagine bigger, darling.
But yeah, he was great in both those things, and I'm kind of coming around. And this movie looks like it could be more up my alley than anything else. Anne Hathaway, Lupita Nyong'o, and Zendaya have joined the cast of Christopher Nolan's upcoming untitled film. They join Matt Damon and Tom Holland.
Haley, Christopher Nolan is collecting superhero movie actors like they're Pokemon cards for his movies, and it's really funny. Obviously, that's not all those people have done, but it makes me laugh as I'm looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess Zendaya and Tom Holland are just going to do press tours together forever. I guess it's just going to...
Because
they're both going to be in Spider-Man.
What the people want.
We were just talking about how it's going to be a problem because he's in Spider-Man 4 and this Nolan movie, and now Zendaya's in both of them too. Like...
It won't be a problem.
At D23, the announcement was made that animated film franchise Ice Age will be returning for a 6th film in the franchise and will return voice actors Ray Romano, Queen Latifah, and John Leguizamo.
Scotty, do I attempt an unprepared Ray Romano impression?
Yes,
yes. Come on.
Yes.
What? Who asked for this? I thought this franchise was on ice. I got a workshop. Not very good. He's really nasally. So.
What are you talking about? It's real whiny.
Yeah. I loved Everybody Loves Raymond, though. Great sitcom. Classic. I haven't really stuck with the Ice Age franchise. I watched the first couple of them, but obviously it's a franchise that's done well enough that they feel compelled to bring it back around. So let's see if new gaggle of kids will be into some prehistoric mammals.
Hey, why not?
Andra Day is joining the season 2 cast of Percy Jackson and the Olympians as Athena.
Haley, cool, great, love Andra Day. She's a Broadway star, if I am remembering on the spot correctly. I was just laughing to Jay before the show that the kid who's playing Percy Jackson already looks like he's aged 15 years from the first season.
True that.
But Andra Day, she's great.
Awesome. Speaking on the possibilities of a season 2 of The Penguin, Colin Farrell told The Hollywood Reporter if there's a great idea for season 2, and the writing was really muscular and as strong or as stronger on the page than it was in the first season, of course I would do it. Farrell also mentioned in the interview that he has signed on for at least 3 total Batman films and has been told he'll appear in 5 or 6 scenes in The Batman Part 2.
Jay, no spoilers for The Penguin, but it was fantastic, and it ended in a fantastic way. We covered it on Always Watching, if you want to hear all the spoilery thoughts. I don't really see, and I said this on that show, I don't really see a vision for The Penguin Season 2 just based on kind of how The Penguin Season 1 ended. But it's not saying that it couldn't happen. But what I am encouraged by and what I'm excited to see is that Colin Farrell is interested in continuing the role, that he has a commitment to the future, that he will be in the Batman Part 2. Like, all of that is really exciting because the character growth of that character throughout The Penguin was fantastic and made such a great handoff. I really liked that Batman movie. but I'm really excited to go back and revisit it before the 2026 Batman Part 2 because of this show. And the rumors are circulating that they could do this again, right? Like after the Batman Part 2, you could take a small villain who's not really in the movie, do a show, and then hand off to the Batman Part 3. And the rumors are swirling that they could do this with Barry Keoghan's Joker, who briefly appeared in the Batman. So, yeah, The Penguin, can't recommend it enough. If you haven't watched it or if you've heard the hype, you got to check it out. It's great.
100%. Disney announced at the D23 Expo in Brazil that Season 2 of the Star Wars spin-off series Andor will premiere April 22nd, 2025 on the streaming platform more than 2 years after Season 1 ended.
Haley, I appreciate the advance notice from Star Wars that this is coming out in April instead of like 2 months before it does. Yeah, Andor is great. I'm interested to see how they'll drop this season. I think that they did 1 episode a week for season 1, and I remember feeling like of all the shows I like watching week by week, Andor was one I could have done in a binge and enjoyed a little more. Not saying I didn't enjoy it or that it's not good, because that's not true. But I just wonder if they're going to change up some of the release schedule, because I don't know. I just wonder if because of the themes and the way it's written, if that might be better. Then again, that was all set up, and now we're going to be like a year or right up against the Rogue One timeline. So maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal if it's a week-by-week release. I don't know. Just curious.
Tiny Butt, this is going to run concurrently with Daredevil then on Disney. So it's going to be a busy Disney content time.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of use out of that podcast, Mike.
Oh, yeah. The first trailer for Mission Impossible 8 has been revealed, along with a release date and title. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning will debut in theaters on May 23rd, 2025. Angela Bassett will reprise her role as CIA Director Erica Sloan from 2018's Mission Impossible Fallout.
Scotty, I know I'm not the only one that's going to want a piece of this, so I'll keep my thoughts relatively brief, but Mission Impossible is a franchise that knows how to cut a trailer. I mean, between the shots of Ethan Hunt running, the question from Tom Cruise, I need you to trust me one last time. And of course I trust him. You've got my heart, you've got my ticket, you got my butt in the seat. I felt like we actually didn't get to see that much from the upcoming final film here, or the new film, The Final Reckoning, which kudos for the title change. I think that was really necessary. But one thing that really stuck out to me is that Pom Clementieff's character from the first film, we see her, and she's, I will try to avoid spoilers here, but her alliances and who she seems to be grouped with in this trailer, I was happy to see, and got me that much more excited for the film for that. Oh, all right. I figured the two of you would want something.
No, just know that we'll be covering it on Bingers Assemble.
That's right. The three of us covered the others. If you are interested in catching up before the next one drops, Bingers Assemble. Okay, Variety has learned from sources familiar with the project that Mark Rylance is at the top of the casting list for the new HBO Harry Potter adaptation. Variety understands that Warner Brothers Television hasn't yet entered into negotiations with the actor, but the studio has reached out to gauge interest and availability. Matt, he seems too old to play Harry Potter.
It's Dumbledore. Okay, come on.
Sorry. I just...
No, but really, it is Dumbledore. That's the article that mentioned.
We buried the lead on that.
Sorry, I like had that actual reaction when I looked it up. I was like, oh, what does he look like? What's this kid? Who is this kid? And I was like, nope, that's gonna be Dumbledore. But I had to tease you guys.
Who's this kid?
They really got to bring somebody in. I mean, they got to be like, dude, you got to be on this show for 10 years. like,
I hope you're 4 years old when you cast Harry Potter. Like, what are they gonna do? It's crazy. Sorry, irrelevant.
Yeah, you just never know how kids are gonna age. Like, I really always wondered about that. Like, yeah, obviously you can do some like makeup and stuff, but like when you casting a show like this has got to be so impossible, especially like kids age differently. Some people always keep their little baby faces. Sometimes by the some kids by the time they're 18 look just like so much older. It's gonna be
the
interesting.
Casting for this will be wild. Like when they bring out like who's gonna be Snape, who's gonna be Harry, Ron, Hermione, who's gonna be like people are gonna go nuts over every single one. They almost just need to do it at once. Just like here it is. Here's the whole cast list of all the people you want to know about because we know about the show. Every season is going to be a book, so you're talking about at least 7. Who knows if they want to split it up? There's going to be time that you have to film everyone. That thing's going to be running for 15 years. You know, by the time, 10 to 15, like that thing's going to be on forever. Not to mention they're going to want to do spinoffs. They're going to want to do so you've really got to nail those cast members, and you got to have them stick around for the iteration of the thing. I mean, it's a big. They're doing casting calls. I think they just wrapped up. So I mean, we should know relatively soon who's going to be in this thing.
Yeah, if they're smart, they're going to release it I think one at a time, but with a lot of fanfare. You know what I mean? Really let us give us a little featurette about each actor when they release who's going to be playing. It's the new Hermione. Who is she? What is she about? You know, it's the new Harry. What is he? I don't know. I think there's people out there who will eat that up. Love it. Well, that's the show. We did it. We made another podcast. Thank you guys for being here. Let's tell the people where they can find us online. Jay Sisson.
Yeah, weekly at Commute the Podcast, like always. Come join us over there if you never have before. And always watching, as we mentioned earlier, we just finished our coverage of The Penguin, and that finale, if you haven't watched that show yet, now is a good time to start because all the episodes are available. You can binge through it and listen to our coverage on it.
Absolutely. And Haley Hobbs.
Also weekly at Source Pages, Brian and I read some Penguin comics to kind of jump on that hype train. Admittedly, we didn't really enjoy the comics, but we talked a little bit about the show, and we'll talk about it some more next week after we've both had a chance to watch all of it. And then Ashley and I will start covering Dune Prophecy next week. So it starts on Sunday night. We're going to record right after the show, and hopefully it'll be out Monday or Tuesday. So keep an eye out on Always Watching for that.
Awesome. And J. Scotty St. Clair.
Yeah, as for me, you can catch me over on Animation Deliberation, the podcast that takes action animation and cartoons seriously, but not too seriously. And I'm grateful to have been a somewhat frequent contributor to the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast here recently. We just hopped on to do a What If Season 3 trailer frame-by-frame breakdown, and that was as enlightening as it was confusing, but I do encourage you to go check it out. It was fun.
I was embarrassed the whole time because I just haven't. As I've been called out for and have known before, I'm terrible at recognizing faces, and then put that through the lens of animation, and so we just kept being like, anybody in the chat know who this person is?
Meanwhile, you've got me Leonardo DiCaprio and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that meme. I'm like, Eternal. There's an Eternal. There's an Eternal.
There were a couple of those like, that's an Eternal, and that's not an Eternal. Like, you kind of take it back. It was very
not
fun.
an Eternal?
There were some Eternals, yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay. I was like, there was one.
There's one Eternal for sure. The others that we thought were Eternals, I think were disproven by the end.
That trailer was like one of those I Spy books from when we were all younger. Like, it was crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll be back with more. You can find me at a lot of these podcasts that we mentioned, Always Watching, Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, and right here on Multiverse News every week. So we'll be back next week with more news. Peace.
You stay classy, Multiverse.
Hey, YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. If you like this, please like, subscribe, all those things. Last week, we asked you guys, what would you do with the new Game of Thrones series? And we only had one comment about it, so we're going to read it. Like we said, Jordan Sev said, Robert's Rebellion. Characters are familiar enough, could even do some of the younger actors as their young parents/relatives. Just enough character familiarity, you potentially get the audience who were into the first season so much, and you get to see the reasons for the entire show. I think that's a really, really solid idea, Jordan.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the sort of like meat of that was revealed in Game of Thrones, but like hearing sort of what else, actually seeing it on screen would always be cool.
Well, it's also told from, characters' unique perspectives. So that could be biased, that could be skewed. It could be interesting to actually see the events, spelled out the way they actually took place without that bias, and maybe find out people were liars or.
True.
Yeah.
True. Well, hey, let's this week get another question for the chat. What would you do with the Star Wars trilogy that we were talking about with Simon Kinberg? What would you choose? Give us a character, an era, a short synopsis. Keep them kind of short because we'll read a couple at the end of next episode. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.
You keep staying classy.
Or else.
Classy or else, YouTube.
Stay classy or catch these hands.